So when I've been watching people or the numbers increase for people signing up for this webinar because preparing students for college is a very daunting task for any parent. And you add in problems with executive functioning, attention deficit disorder, parents who maybe have not been to college, students who have issues that might get in the way of their ability to make it in college, the concerns of parents, the concerns of students themselves. There's so many things involved in this. And I'll be honest that it was difficult to come up with just 6 steps because this could have been an all-day seminar, as most of you probably know, and some of you know more about the process than I do. But I want to share these with you and welcome your questions in the question box or in the chat box, whatever works for you, and I will answer them at the end if I don't answer them while we're moving forward. Okay, so what does it take for a smooth launch from high school to college? The first thing that comes to mind for me is confidence. Our students need to feel good about themselves and about their skills in order to move forward, whether that's community college and actually showing up to a college class and understanding what it means to get a syllabus the first day and not having anyone check on that until everything's due at the end of the semester, having the skills that they need, the executive functioning skills, planning, time management, organizational skills, being able to stay on top of things, stay focused and attentive, and many other skills that I'll talk about in terms of what's needed specifically to work on in college in a way that helps students who are not too sure about themselves to build confidence and to feel as one with the other students. I can say that the biggest piece that can get in the way for often for students who have problems, diagnosed or undiagnosed with attentional problems or executive functioning and learning disabilities, is that all they want is to be able to go into a college classroom or onto a college campus and be like everyone else. They don't want to be different. They don't want to be noticed in a way that is different from anyone else, which means maybe not taking medication, not wanting to ask for help, not telling people what difficulties they have, which can get in the way academically and socially. So in order for a smooth launch, it's important that we help students gain the skills they need to advocate for themselves, to be more confident about the fact that it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to have something that doesn't work perfectly for you because guaranteed every other student has something. It just might not be the same issue that you have. Having knowledge. What's the campus like? Where do I go to take my classes? How long is it going to take me if I'm driving to school? All of this information needs to be gathered in order for that student to be comfortable. And in addition to that, providing support, having support from parents, for students who are there in their senior year in high school, possibly there's a teacher or a counselor who can help with this process, even a college placement counselor in the school. It's important to understand that students want to be adults because we were all taught years ago that when you turn 18, you're an adult. You might be adult legally, but for those of you who aren't familiar with the current statistics, the executive functioning skills and that prefrontal cortex of the brain continues to develop up until about age 30. So many of our students who are going off in a traditional fashion to school at age 18 or 19 are nowhere near ready in many areas of executive functioning. And so it makes going to college a bit rough for them. So we want to be able to provide support and make it a much smoother launch. So the first step, my feeling is we need to start early. Communicate with your student or students if you're a coach or a therapist. in junior and senior year. It's never too early to get started, because as students have a sense of what they're curious about, what they want to know, the easier it is for them to start to gather that information from other people and find out exactly what it is that they don't know. So if they're not sure what they don't know, have them ask questions. And if they're concerned about anything or they want something special, it's important to listen. A great example of that is the choice of where to go to school. And first part of that might be, does the student stay at home, or does the student go off to a college and live in a dorm or an apartment? That's going to vary student by student. And what's important is to make sure that your student is involved in the choice. I understand for parents that it's very difficult to see a student who you have been taking care of, who might have some lack of skills and social issues, that you're wondering, gee, is going off to college outside of the community a good idea? Talk to your student about it. Visit campuses, look at all the options, because I'm surprised very often at how successful my students who have had their parents actively and supportively involved throughout high school and before that, how successful they are when they go off to college on their own, in spite of everyone's worries, because they've had that support and they're ready to try out the skills. For students who are in coaching junior and senior year, it's a great time to talk about what they don't know or what they think they know, sort of doing a bit of myth busting and reality checking. What do you think it will be like at college? How are you going to manage eating, sleeping, taking care of yourself, socializing, academics, and so on? And at the same time, students are going to have questions about what they're expected to do and what involvement other people will have in their lives on campus. So helping them to come up with questions and concerns and really listening is the first step to a successful transition. There's nothing better than knowing that your parents or your friends or your coach and teachers or advisor are listening to what you're concerned about. And if you're concerned about the food on campus, that's a valuable, valid concern, because some campuses have great food and other campuses don't. If you're a picky eater, how are you going to manage that? Is that going to make or break your decision to go to that school? And even though it might seem silly to some, it's really important for others. Another part of it, and this is a question that I ask all my students, is what type of environment do you want when you go off to school? It's not about going to the school that your mom or dad or brother or sister went to just because there's a legacy opportunity. If you prefer to be in a city and they all went to school out in the country, are you going to be happy? What will make you happy? What's the environment that will give you a sense of comfort? Because comfort adds to that feeling of well-being and support and security. So it is important to have that conversation and find out the likes and dislikes and desires of students. Often parents will make that choice and say, well, we want you close to home. Fine. What's the radius? Do you want your student within 2 hours, 3 hours? What are the options? Cities, out in the country, suburban? How far do you want them to go? And what's reasonable? And are there schools in that area within that radius that will meet the needs of your student? So it has to be balanced out, and that's where the conversation is really important, and your students' feelings are extremely important and need to be listened to in order for them to be successful in college. Oops. Let's see if my computer wants to work. There we go. Okay. So step 2, help your student identify resources to get the answers. This is not about mom and dad or even a coach or a therapist sitting down and saying, well, this is what you need to do. Here's how you do it. Go do this and you'll be fine. It's great to use brainstorming and give the students a sense of collaboration to know that their ideas are important. And for example, if a student wants to find out about those dining halls, is the food good? Is the food not good? There are websites you can look at. You can look at the ratings of different colleges and all the things about those schools, the social life, the drinking, unfortunately, um, the extracurricular activities, the food, the dorms, the professors, you name it, it's out there. But it's not up to us to get that information. It's up to our students to do that. So we want to help them find resources. Sometimes that resource might be an older brother or sister of a friend who goes to a school that they're interested in. Well, would you be willing to talk with that student? How could you get in touch with him? When are you going to do that? How will I know that you'll do that, and how might I help you with it? Rather than, oh, I'll call his mom and get you this information and give it to you. We want to promote independence as early as possible. So that's where the brainstorming comes in and talking about the situation. So other situations that might come up in terms of needing resources could be about different majors. Now, when a person goes and looks at a listing of what's available in a school, what the different majors are, the prerequisites, the courses, it's important to consider not only the courses, but the class sizes, the time of day when classes are offered. Many of the issues that get in the way for our students are the fact that they can't get up early in the morning and 8 o'clock classes just don't work, or, and they're in a class with 100 other kids. So going and finding out how large the classes are, what the attention is, the level of attention that's paid to them by the professor versus a teacher's assistant. Who might the student get to meet with if there's a problem? Are there supports on that campus? Learning center supports. Is that something a student is willing to use? A writing center. For a lot of my students over the years, writing center was the biggest piece, being able to go and take advantage of it. The tutoring center. So helping students to find out as much as they can about what's going to be available to them. And then the other part of it is sort of doing a bit of myth busting around their assumptions that everyone else is going to be prepared and ready for college, and that I'm the only one that's not going to have all my stuff together, or I'm slow at reading and everyone else is going to be faster than me. That's really not the case. And to help students understand that everyone learns at their own pace and that they need to work on whatever accommodations they might need, that's an important piece to talk about. Uh, Campus visits are helpful for that as well. Go to the Learning Center, find out what's available, look around the campus. How long will it take to get from point A to point B? Does your student feel comfortable on the campus? How much time does the student have alone with the older students who are at that college who might be giving tours or talking one-on-one with students when they have questions? It's important for parents to back off and to allow that process to happen, because there are situations that we might assume are, as parents, are going to be a certain way, or our students might think, well, no one's going to watch me, I can stay up all night, I can do what I want, and I'll still get everything done. Well, we know as adults it doesn't work that way, but often we can't explain that, and it's better that they learn from peers. One other piece that I do want to mention, I'm smiling as I say it, but it's truly not funny, is that when college application, excuse me, not college application, college acceptance has happened and they're filling out forms for dorm placement. If you are a parent, and for any parents that you know, please ask them not to fill the forms out for their students. They can brainstorm and ask questions and help their students fill it out if they're asked to. But it's one of the biggest problems that we have are parents who have a description or a belief of what they want the perfect roommate to be, and it's a setup for failure. Because if your child needs music to work by, is a night owl, and you write in there, well, my child is fine with quiet, needs quiet all the time. What is it that we need to be doing in order to make sure that your student gets the right amount of sleep and that the roommate gets the right amount of sleep? Don't write in all this information that isn't actually your kid, because it hurts them more than helps. There's a question here, and I want to just take a look at it. It says, whoops, sorry, my questions are always, all right. Question for appropriate timing. Let's see, if the Disability Support Office in a college is not supporting the student once they get there, what to do, and what if there's a staffing change during the college year and the quality declines? What are other resources on campus? Okay, so that question is about disability support services, and I will answer it briefly now and then get to that at the end as well. One of the things that's important to find out is what's the depth of the services that are available, because in some schools, if your student is not taking advantage of services or might not be in a situation where the school has as great high level of support as they need, then that's not going to be the best school. So that's why it's important to find out what is it that individual schools have, and help your students compare that school and their disability services office. There might be one person in a DSS office on one campus and a staff of 5 with a couple of coaches on another. Big difference. So that's part of that investigation, to go identify the resources and find out exactly what's going on. That's a great question. So the next step is to co-create a plan for skill building during high school. The basics: laundry, money management, healthy eating, cooking, and routines. The routines, I would say, are the biggest problems: exercise, sleep, medication, and studying. But all of these together ensure a smooth transition to independent living. So typically what we tell students is that by the age of 15 or 16, if they are not already doing their own laundry or cooking something, it could be basic cooking, but some kind of cooking, being able to put a pot on a stove, understanding the difference between good food and not so good for you food, not overdoing it and eating sugary snacks all the time. Shifting all of that, that's a really important piece at that age to have your students involved at home. Money management. Once your kids are old enough to get a job, if they're working part-time, have them get a checking account. There's something about, there's something about the idea of money and ATM machines that's been sort of an issue for many, many years, that it's not as simple as go to the ATM, push a button, and the money comes out. But many students don't add up their ATM receipts, and they think that there's plenty of money in there. They figure, well, I just took it from the ATM, I didn't use any checks. That's not the situation. So it's important to help your kids understand money, basic money management. How much money will they have each month when they get to campus, or when they're in college and living at home? What are the expectations financially as compared to when they were in high school? That's a great conversation to have. You're still going to be living here. These are the changes that we'd like to make. Let's have a conversation. So co-create the plan. Talk about it together and help your student to feel better about making these changes. Laundry. I just spoke to someone the other day who was telling me about, it was mentoring a coach who mentioned that when the student didn't get around to doing the laundry, after a certain number of days, mom just picked up the laundry and did it. I understand that it's very tempting to pick up the laundry and do it, but parents need to understand that it's not a good idea. If your kid runs out of laundry first year in college, that's a learning experience. Rather than do it, if your child knows how to do the laundry and there's laundry detergent and the washing machine works, it's their responsibility. So that's the piece where we need to start weaning our kids off of us and pushing them toward these independent living skills. This is something that's really difficult for most parents, is to understand that college is not about perfection, and don't expect it. It's a learning process. First semester freshman year, most students do not do very well. Some, the average actually don't even get a 2.0 in many schools, and that's okay. Excuse me. The piece that we want to think about is your child learning? What support do they have to improve their learning, and how they learn from their mistakes or their habits, maybe staying up all night, studying too late, not getting enough food, not going to class because they were so tired they slept through the class, uh, not understanding the material and being unable to advocate for themselves. All of these things are going to happen. It's almost a given. There will be stuff happening unless you have a child who just was born ready to go. And there are some of those in this world. But the piece there is to make sure that whatever it is, whether it's putting too much stress on themselves, feeling that they have to prove to all the adults that they can do this and not telling anyone they're struggling, that's a lot worse and a lot more dangerous and leads to depression and anxiety, drug abuse, you name it. There are a lot of things that are available out there that get in the way of school. So it's important to be kind and accepting of your students' struggles and offer to be supportive and help when you're asked to be help when you're asked for help, excuse me, my tongue is tied today, because it is a learning process. As I said earlier, an 18 or 19-year-old, even kids who go to school in their 20s, they're not always ready. Their executive functioning skills are still developing. So we want to be gentle and patient and give them the support that they need. And going back to the person who asked me the question about the disability services, if your student is not getting what's needed, then it's important to find out, are there services available, and is this a school that can provide those services? And then have the conversation, is this the right school? Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes you need one at the next level. And there are specific books and there's information online that any career counselor can help you with at the school, college counselor, to find out the level of support that each school has, because it does vary from, as I said, a single person office to a large office with coaches, tutors, and others there to support the students. So, step 5, freshman year is challenging. As I just said, there is no magic wand. So consider the issues that I talked about earlier for the first couple of steps: being supportive, helping students to learn a certain level of skill in order to then move forward. If your student does not know how to do something, how can we turn around and say, why didn't you do that? They don't know what they don't know. So oftentimes it's learning by experience, but if there's a way to help that and soften the blow of going off to college and having so many things that are unexpected and having a rocky transition, by prepping them junior and senior year, having conversations, making multiple visits to campuses if you can afford to do that, talking to people on the phone, having your student talk to the prospective roommates over the summer so they can coordinate what they're bringing to campus so they don't have two of everything or nothing at all. And being able to set up a plan for staying in communication while letting your child face those challenges. And I find this even for coaches, for those of you who are coaches and others who are considering hiring coaches for your students, that it's not about us hand-holding every single day. I don't call my students every day. They know they can text me anytime they want to. We set up plans for the week. We have an accountability set up, but it's not about making that freshman year the best for them. That's up to them, and they have to tell us what's going on in order for us to help them. So there are many pieces involved, and as much as we want to make this the absolute best, expect the challenges. Be honest with yourself as an adult, as a parent, and also be honest with your child to say, freshman year can be full of a lot of bumps, and I'm here to support you in whatever way that I can and encourage you to use the supports on campus. Let us know if something isn't going well. It's not about being ashamed or embarrassed. It's about us helping you to get where you want to go. And to have that level of support, to set up the number of times that you check in, that really makes a difference. Because if you're expecting perfection and you're always calling, how did it go? How did it go? Did you study last night? What was the grade on the test? You're going to add to the anxiety that's out there, and that's a real problem for many students. So the last one is a little bit more on allowing your student to make choices and experience both the positive and negative consequences. I understand completely, and I train so many people around the world to coach students in high school and prepping them for college. And they're always saying, but, I don't want to have the student fail. I need to make sure that they do okay. Well, that's not our job. Our job is to support the student to make his or her own choices with as much information as they have with our help, with that brainstorming, with doing reality checks and asking, how realistic is it if you study until 4 in the morning that you're going to actually get to that 8 a.m. class? How's that going to work for you? That's a legitimate question for a parent, for a coach, even for a sibling to ask, an older sibling who might have already experienced it. Sharing stories of what might have happened to you in your generation, your time in college, that's going to fall on deaf ears. These are students who want to choose what they're going to do in life, or they want to be told what to do. So the best way to do it is to have them make choices, because if you tell them what to do and it doesn't work, they're going to blame you. And then the world is going to become everybody else is telling me what to do and they're not making good decisions. This isn't my fault. It's not my responsibility. We want to create and develop young people who are self-determined and able to make good choices, understand the consequences of their actions, and how to change, shift, and transition when times get tough. That's the piece that's so important here in allowing students to make their own choices. If the choice is to skip a class, what are the consequences of that? With some professors, there won't be any consequence. For others, there will be a grade markdown or a different issue that possibly, let's say the student couldn't find anyone to get the information from and has to go to the professor and say, hey, I skipped class yesterday or I missed class. I need the information. Who knows what that professor might say? And it's not a scenario that we're necessarily going to be able to prepare students for. They have to figure it out. And it's also important in this transition time for parents to get the support that they need, which is why I really consider that coaches for parents and not necessarily coaching around how to parent your student, but how to manage yourself. How do you go on in your life, especially if you're an empty nester? What are the changes that are happening for you as a parent? And how do you, those of you who support parents, what is it that they need to move forward and not spend the whole day obsessing over not getting a text from their student who's really busy in school, studying, hopefully making friends, having fun, and doing great things? And even when there are struggles, there needs to be more of a set time to check in. The students who do the best, in my experience, are those who know when they're going to talk to their parents on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. If they want to check in with their parents in between that, that's up to them. Certainly, if there's a situation or an emergency, then we want to be sure that students know that they need to be reachable so that their parents can get to them when they need to. But it's not about the texting every few minutes trying to find out if you got to your next class. And trust me, that happens. I have many students who will say they're distracted by the text messages and the phone calls that they get from their parents. And that's not the way to send your kids off to college. And it's not even the way to send them off to their first job. It's a distraction. And the consequences there are the consequences that negatively impact your student, but that you or the parents that you're working with have created. So it's important to be able to step back from that and find out how to find some balance in there. One of the pieces that I find helpful is to use self-management skills. This is great for students as well as for the parents. That could be exercise, meditation, mindfulness. There's so much out there on ADHD and mindfulness, and I encourage you to take a look at it or email me and I'll get you some specific information on that, to find a way to balance out and reduce your stress around worrying about your kids. And for those of us who are doing this work professionally, it's important to help our students figure out, well, what is it that's going to help you decompress and de-stress after you've had an exam, or it's been a long day, or you're frustrated, or you didn't get the grade that you wanted, or you didn't get the date that you wanted, whatever it might be. Come up with strategies for that. I have students who know that when they get stressed, they need to go for a run. Other ones, bike ride, go take a class, meet up with a friend and talk, whatever it might be. Help your students identify what's good for them, not necessarily what's worked for you, because the two are not the same. So I want to invite you to really explore. There's, as I said, there's so much more that I could share with you, and I intentionally don't keep these webinars too long because I always want to be able to answer questions. And I'm going to check in the question box here and see if there's anything else, and I might be able to answer some more on that disability issue. Are there any other questions? Fill them in. So while I'm waiting to see if there are any other questions, I do want to go back to the disability support. The students that are provided or assigned services from disability services, meaning that they have an IEP or a 504, they brought it in, they're told, yes, you qualify for services. We cannot get the students to go to those offices 9 times out of 10. So as much as there is frustration, and oftentimes students will say they didn't help me or they didn't remind me to come, when a student gets to college, there's an expectation that they will show up. So they need to make it to their appointments. That's that catch-22 of what happens when we have students who can't make it there because they forget, they're afraid to go by themselves, they're embarrassed because it says disability services over the door. Many schools are changing that to accessibility services. They're embracing student services and having everything under one roof. Because it's not something to be ashamed of, but it's difficult. So if you have a student who is telling you that they have not received services, ask a few more questions. And this isn't about your student not telling you the truth. It's about the process. being so difficult, those again, the executive functioning skills, if they can't initiate the task successfully to get to that office, to find out what time will you go, who will you meet with, what will make it easier for you to get there. Would it be helpful for you to check in with me or with a friend, whatever it might be, to find out whether or not your student is able to get to that office. With the current laws, there is no way that you can get that information from the schools, which I know is very frustrating for parents. It's to protect the students, but it's difficult because sometimes you are the person who is helping and is the one who can facilitate the process more effectively. But once again, that's where you might want to hire a coach for your student to help the student figure out how he or she is going to get to that office. And when things change, as you asked in your question here, if the quality of services at a disability service center at a school declines and something happens, that's the choice of you and your student as to whether or not you take that to the powers that be at the school, whether that's to the dean or to the president. It varies at every school, that much I know. And so it's important to be able to figure out who is the person who will have a positive impact to help you with the situation. And whenever possible, have your student do it first, because the schools frown upon parents' involvement at a certain level, but they really appreciate it when students can do this on their own. So whatever you can do to encourage your student is extremely helpful and positive. Now, one of the things that I said at the very beginning for a few people who might not have been here is that I could talk for hours on this concept and this topic. I mean, there are so many different pieces to it, but the bottom line to helping your students be successful and launch to college is to listen to them, to make sure that they have a chance to clearly understand what their own questions and concerns are, help them to investigate, to find out, get some answers before they go to college, the how-tos of basic daily living, the how-tos of different ways to study, finding out how to manage the campus, how long it might take to get from a dorm to a dining hall, when's the best time to do laundry, getting to classes, finding different places and having someone on campus who might be able to guide them when they get stuck. So helping your students to identify in advance the supports that they can use that will make them feel comfortable and ease that transition, that's what's going to make all the difference. And obviously, since I'm in coaching, I do believe in coaching. Many coaches help students transition. If you can bring a coach in junior or senior year in high school and help with the transition, I found it to be extremely valuable for that first semester freshman year, if not longer, but definitely in that first semester. It's not as scary for them, and the unknowns have been shifted a bit, so they're not totally unknown. They're new, but we've done some exploration around it, so it's not a total shock when they get to campus. Well, good luck to those of you who are launching students, and if you have any questions, please let me know, and thank you so much for attending the webinar.